Hello, my name is Troy Bankford. I'm going to show you a quick tutorial how to actually use the letters and cut them out on a bandsaw and make some really cool looking stuff. Alright, let's get started. I've already printed out my pattern from the PDF file. I chose to do a capital Z. So the first thing we got to do is, after we print it out, is we've got to put the spray adhesive on the back. So I've got a piece of old newspaper here I've got laid out. Shake up my spray adhesive. You don't want something super strong. I just got a general performance lightweight bonding, because again, it's just a temporary bond. You don't want anything permanent. And I just fully coat the back. Now, you kind of got two options here. You kind of got to play between getting too much and too little. So I spray on a fairly light coat, kind of let it tack up a little bit. Kind of my test is we'll wait till it picks up with my finger like that, and then I know it's ready to go. Now the next step that we need to do is we need to make sure the wood is clean. I've got a really nice piece of 2x8 here. Another thing you got to do is you got to kind of plan your piece. So you can't see it really well probably from there, but there's a big knot piece missing from here, so we want to kind of avoid this. So when I lay my piece on here, I'm going to do it knowing that I've got to avoid this area right here. So I'm going to go ahead and put my piece on there, keeping it as far away from there as I can. Again, I'm going to peek and make sure I'm far. So, okay. So now I've gone ahead and applied my stencil. I've lined it up so I can see where I'm going to end up here. I know I'm still on the board. And then we're going to go ahead and move ahead to the next step, which is freeing this piece from our full board so we can start cutting it. So for that, I'm going to use just this battery operated saw, and I'm going to cut across here. Now don't cut your line, just cut across so we can get a good even cut when we go ahead and cut it. So okay. Now if you don't want to do this, you can buy your boards in shorter pieces, or have them cut them down at the lumberyard or the store you buy them in, so it makes smaller pieces so you can cut your piece more easily. Okay, I think we're ready to start cutting, so let's go over to the saw. Okay, before we get started with the saw, I just want to make a few points. I've gone ahead and I've adjusted everything properly. Blade control is really important when you're doing these fine cuts with a bandsaw. So adjusting your saw blade and getting it exactly where you want is a very important thing to do. The other thing is blade selection. I choose to use an 1/8 inch blade, a piece of a broken one, but it's very narrow, it's got very fine teeth. Cuts you need. I wouldn't suggest using anything but an 1/8 inch wide blade for cutting some of the letters we have. You can use a 1/4 inch, but it makes it a lot more difficult to do. So I've got my saw all adjusted, leveled, everything's ready to go, so we're going to go ahead and start cutting some wood.
Okay, as you start your cuts, we're going to go ahead and cut off the waste material above and below our letters. Work carefully and slowly, cutting as close to as you can to the line. I suggest choosing in your mind to what I call eat the line, or the saw blade will cut and remove the line that you're trying to follow with your pattern. So I suggest using the eat the line methodology for beginners. So as you can see, I'm cutting off the above and below, and we're going to zoom in here and we're going to start looking at the inner cuts. With a bandsaw, you need to make wide curved cuts. And so sometimes planning your cuts is important. Here I'm cutting a straight portion, then as you see I'm curving out. I don't need to cut away a bunch of that extra material, so I'm just trying to get and exit the cut. Next I'm going to cut the bottom part of the Z. I'm following it along and I'm going to go past. Now I'm going to curve down and I'm going to go back and cut the angle down the leg of the Z. As you get better and better at this, you'll become more optimized and find ways to cut as little material as you can and still not have to fight the radius cut or the curve cut with the saw. So as we go along here, I'm going to show you some more ways to do this. Now here you're going to see we're going to be coming into an inside cut, an inside corner that's square. If this was rounded, of course, you'd be able to cut and round out. So I'm just cutting deep enough to get to the bottom of the cut, to get cut fully into the corner. And then when you back out very slowly. You don't want to pull the blade off the wheels. And so, again, I moved into that second corner with the next one. Now, as you're pushing forward again, I'm curving, I'm rounding out. Again, I'm exiting the cut by radius cutting and coming on out. Now I'm going to spin the piece around. I'm going to come back from the other direction. Now it's important to line up your blade before you get into the real cut. So start following your piece around what's already cut before you enter the cut. That way you can enter it smoothly and there's no residual transition. You can't see where you started and stopped your piece. And so sometimes you'll see me go back and forth a couple times. That's simply to try and make sure I'm lined up and I'm cleaning up those rough edges so you can't see the start and the stop points. Now with this piece I'm going to use a different method. I'm going to curve in instead of curving out again. It's just a different way to do it. As you're going to see with this choice, it's actually a little more difficult. I'm going to get out of this because I've showing you this as an example. When you create an inside little block, a little piece that's loose per se, inside the cut, sometimes those pieces can bind your blade and cause you some problems. So if we stopped right there and tried to remove that piece, we'd have to stop the saw, shut the saw off, wait for the blade to stop, and then and get out of the piece so we can get rid of that little scrap. And sometimes you have to do that. You can't. Some letters you'll be forced to do that. So you don't have a lot of choice. But as you can see here, we're going to finish the cut. We're going to come, when you exit the cut, you see I kind of backed up just a little bit there. That's cleaning up that cut, making sure the start and the stop point is not noticeable when you do your cut. So ideally you don't want anybody to be able to see that you started and stopped, that you came from two different directions. And this is where you need to make sure that your blade is set perfectly squared to the table. This is where it would show up if you didn't set that properly.
So that's Z. Now we sticker off. We adhered to it. Now, you in leaving this. If you're going to do a bunch of them, all you have to do. The process is very similar with a scroll saw, but that's pretty much all there is to do. Now we're going to show you an advanced technique that you can do to these letters with a router. If you have a router, it makes a very cool effect. But so let's go see what we can make it look like with the router. So we got our router table here. We're going to go ahead and get it set up. We're going to change bits, and we're going to go ahead and cut some letters. So. now that our test is done, we can take a look at our shape and take a look at the layout and say, I think that's exactly what we're going to do. So we're going to use this just as we got it. All right, before we start, I want to talk a little bit about router safety. They're very powerful and can cause a lot of damage, so make sure you really understand the tool and don't be messing around without, if you've never done it before, have somebody help you. So. So as you can see now, our letter is routed. We've got that fancy edge, kind of offsets the letter a little bit. Now it's time to do some sanding, clean it up a little bit, and okay, here we are at the sander. We're going to go ahead and sand our letter and make it ready to paint. I'm going to clean up some of the edges by hand. All right, there we go. It's all sanded, ready to go, ready for some paint or decoration. You're all ready to set. If you have any questions, give me some feedback, and I'll try to answer your questions. So good luck and have fun.